Welcome, guys. Welcome to the podcast. My name is Justin. I am your host of Next Album Please, and today we have Hugo from Tantric. How you doing, man?
I'm doing good, man. I'm just sitting here in my Rolls Royce in front of the Taj Mahal.
That's it.
Just,
That's the life.
yeah, getting a couple more TVs put on. About it.
Sounds good, man. So, I just want to say first off, thank you so much, for coming on the podcast. Your band is absolutely insane. I've been following you since the early 2001s, and I mean since you dropped the self-titled album. And basically, when you guys responded, yeah, we'll jump on the podcast, I was like ecstatic. I was like, yes, please, come on.
And like people always say thank you for coming to musicians, and like really, it's such. I really do appreciate that anybody even likes anything that I do enough where they want to talk to me about it. But I really appreciate the time that you're giving me, because maybe it might expose another person that has never heard of Tantric and make them a fan.
Definitely, and definitely, that's what we build this upon too, is trying to get you guys more and more fans. So,
right, and then I can buy that '88 Oldsmobile,
right?
Yeah, no rust.
So, guys, if you haven't heard of Tantric, you must be living under a rock, because these guys have Billboard topping hits. Basically, they have tracks like "Live Your Life," "Down and Out," and the big dog everybody knows, "Breakdown." But you also gave us tracks like "My Forever," which, in my opinion, hands down, the best track you guys have, and that's just my opinion.
And I do love that song. It's one of those things where you're like, oh, I don't know which one of these girls walking out of this plane is a supermodel. And then you see the supermodel. You're like, oh, it must be that one. But no, yeah, I love it. We're the biggest band you never heard of.
You know what? Definitely, that's the best
Yeah.
way to explain it too, because your guys' tracks have been on multiple video games and just
Yeah.
compilations and everything like that. So definitely awesome.
Yeah. I often am proud of my band's career, just for the sheer will and to survive against all odds. It's not hard to do. It's not easy to do anything for 20 years.
No.
And still do it with fervor. But at the same time, it was kind of an accidental blessing, because I feel like, when you become a band that literally like wipes their ass with, billions of dollars, there's no narrative in your life, it's just comes this whole really pseudo, it's not a real reality. So it's not, you start writing stuff that is not relatable to certain people. They're like, and they didn't have the 2021 Range Rover. That's not an everyday problem. So I think that, and this is kind of an unfortunate truth, but with art, there needs to be struggle or some sort of, like antagonist and protagonist and somebody who like observes it. But I think that I've just been fortunate to just have, just when somebody else is kind of like giving up, like somebody else, it's just, we're like that band. But I'm too stupid to know that I can't do it anymore. and right now it's just like, I'm just gonna ride it out. But I am proud of it, and it's 20 years. I never thought I remember when I was like first starting off, and I would see like bands like even Alice in Chains, like that was a huge influence. But or like you're like, holy crap, those guys are like the veterans, and you looked at them like seniors, as you look at them as for a freshman, you're like, holy shit, seniors. And then you blink an eye, and the people that came to your first concerts now have kids that are like, adults and more mature than you, and the music's been passed on. But like really, it takes a village with Tantric, and we need every fan that we have, and they're just so dedicated. Everybody just bring something to the pot, and I try not to disappoint, you know, and I have a great, you know, crew of band. I mean, I've got incredible band members that are young and, you know, really have this passion for, you know, being in it, and it's, you know, it keeps you young, you know.
Definitely, definitely. And you and the band Tantric, I mean, hell, you guys have gone through, you know, a lot of changes over the years. I mean, like you said, 20 years is a long time. There's expect to
Right.
have changes. You guys started out, you're the only original member, correct?
Right.
Okay.
Well, when I first started, I thought of a band as like a marriage. We're gonna be together forever, right?
Yeah.
But you soon realize that, you know, people grow in and out of things, and other priorities take over their life, right? But there's a few constants in my life, and music, and having music as a vocabulary, I guess, I don't remember being alive and not having that. So that being said, I kind of started looking at tantric, uh, and shifted my perspective as like more like this vessel that was kind of like launched and had a, you know, this big, you know, name that everybody somewhat recognizes or does or thinks they're huge or whatever. But we were never so like one mindset that we couldn't adapt, and it's just like this boat that carries music. And you know, we went from doing this kind of like acoustic based post grunge to like introducing, you know, you know, fretless 7-string violin
Yeah.
through a Marshall stack, and like I never ever flinched twice, because I was like, you know, it's not like people are, you know, it's like, oh man, I just think it's cool to, as an artist, if it's not if money isn't your thing,
Mm-hmm.
is just to always try to create, so, you know, take a little step further and
Yeah, definitely.
maintain, you know, it's, or why else do it, you know?
Yeah, why continue to
Right.
like why evolve, you know? Exactly.
Right.
And you
But
guys definitely have, you know, evolved over time, especially like what you said with the violin and everything. It's the 2018 album is, people please do not sleep on this album. It is so damn
it's
good.
such a great record, you know, and like every record has got its moments,
Hmm.
and I do believe in making records. I don't believe in putting this amount of songs in a, you know, thing. You know, they should be in itself like a whole thing, you
Yeah.
know, some of its parts. But yeah, you know, sometimes, you know, they just come out. So I mean, that record reminds me of when, you know, our first guy produced most of the first 3 records was this really famous producer. His name was Toby Wright. He did every Alice in Chains record, and one of
Hmm.
my favorite records that he did was Jar of Flies. And I was like, you know, he was telling me how Jar of Flies came about, and he was like, well, it wasn't even supposed to be an acoustic record. We were basically doing pre-po in acoustic and cutting it to real, and fell in love with that whole thing. And it was like the whole thing was written, recorded, mastered, mixed in 10 days.
Oh
And I
wow.
was just like, holy shit. But in all art, I feel like the details are in the accidents. You
Yeah.
know, they're not in the off centers of symmetry. But that was one of those records that like we had the songs there. You know, we were able to do it, and we were just kind of pushing, but it just all fell into place like almost it was unbelievable. But we ended up recording, you know, editing whatever songs to make them better, blah, 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 arrangement, even writing something, playing, tracking, mixing, mastering, doing the cover for that whole record in, I believe, less than 10 days.
Wow.
Yeah.
Damn.
And a lot of the parts were parts that, you know, like I, I have the basic ideas of songs, but you know, the guys never heard these guitar parts or bass parts, so they're like learning them on the spot. But it was just that time. It was just like when, you know.
Yeah. And that's crazy because you know, like, if I remember correct, it took a couple months, right, for the self-titled album because of all the strings that were attached to it and everything like that. That's what I was reading, at least.
Well, the thing is this, you know, like first of all, like, you know, people that have more recent careers than mine, I'm that old timer that I was like, back in the day, we used to record on reel to reel. It's like this, but, it also costs, I think that record cost us maybe like, I want to say some astronomical number, like, 300, 400, 500 grand. Yeah. But we also had this retardedly huge record deal, and we were too new in the business to realize that, like, all this catering and this, like, all this shit is we're paying for. We're just like, holy, we were just so into it. But really, it's not about the amount of money you spend. You can spend $100 billion on a car or $1,000 on a car, and essentially they do the same thing. But
exactly.
But at the same time is, liking the people you're with and loving what you're doing, and not just doing it to do it. The reward is the result, not the monetary and the adulation. But it's something that, sometimes I go back and I listen to these records that I did. I'll listen to a record after I record it, and I'll listen to it straight on for a long time, and then I'll just shelf it, and I won't listen to it for years.
Yeah.
And then go back 5 years later and just, let me put in this record. And like it, it's just like you're listening to it and forgetting that you're the one who wrote it and is, the creator, because it's in a different age. It's a different part of your life. You're telling different stories, and you're kind of like chuckling at some of them. You're like, that those kids. I'm like, oh shit, that's me. But having great guys is an important thing.
Yeah.
There's no crying in rock and roll. But I have, of course, Baz. He comes from this legendary, musical background. His dad was, in one of the arguably biggest 80s bands of all time, Cinderella. And Jaron, who, he's the first bass player that plays with a pick that I was like, I'm down, because I used to be an anti bass player with a pick. I was just like, oh, well, you're cheating, you got to play it.
Yep.
But, and these guys also, are in a different generation. So what, is common, like, like pop culture to me, their pop culture is a little bit different. So they forced me to shift perspectives and kind of look at it from a different view. You know what I'm saying? And it's good to have like these younger generation of super great friends, the best friends I've ever had, but also they'll be like, Dad, that's not cool to do anymore, like, don't do it, don't tap out a guitar solo, or don't say word heaven in a song, but and it's cool to have that, but
yeah,
because and it brings a whole different dynamic, and it doesn't hurt me, because like, you're surrounded by these younger people don't even notice that I'm just a tinge older.
Yeah. Well, and then, right. and the thing is though too, like, especially with your guys' newest album, it's super mature, because that's what you bring to the table, but it also has this modern feel to it, which they bring and everything, and it I think it meshed probably. I don't know. Arguably, I feel like Mercury Retrograde is probably your guys' best album. I mean, it's just so good.
I love that record. But I do think that it's just like, it's a rainy, they're like coats, it's appropriate for a certain thing, but it's a good playthrough record, and but like sometimes I'll listen to Mind Control, and it's one of our heavier records, and I remember I was just in that record, I was programming all the drums like on a PCM on purpose, like, so it kind of gave it this like hip hop type of cut, and it wasn't these predictable like drum fills, and I had this great drummer at the time, his name was Rich Monica, who like could emulate these like cuts that rappers or DJs or only editing could do, like 16ths, and it was really cool, and I love that record. But this one is just like, it's like Sugar Ray Leonard, pound for pound, just gonna give you a little bit of everything.
Yeah, definitely.
And it wasn't broke. And I think in the Sum of All Things, which is our newest record, man, it's just like I consider that the Empire Strikes Back to my Star Wars, because everybody was like, "How are you gonna top Star Wars?" And then Empire came out, and you're like, "Yeah, that's
yeah, no,
all right."
and your guys' albums definitely, through the years, you guys took what about 8? Was it 8 years or 9 years in between, right? From
Well,
Mercury
it
and Mind
was
Control.
no, it wasn't necessarily like that. So what happened was our first record came out in '01, right?
Mm-hmm.
And our second record came out in, I believe, '04, right?
Yeah.
And then after that, it's when we actually recorded a third record that we actually, and I'm slowly kind of like trickling parts of it in. And this record was finished. And this was right at the threshold of the universal change of the music industry, where just everybody was shutting down. And that was basically the death of kind of like selling records.
Yeah.
I mean, people don't sell millions of physical copies anymore. It's crazy. But and in that time period, when the guys that were in the band at the time, Todd and Matt was in there, it kind of just, everybody kind of got discouraged at that moment. And they had already gone through the shit with Travis, and I understand where they were coming from. But to me, I was just like, yo, man, I cannot like let this dictate how I've been doing this my whole life and have always been broke through it. So me going back to broke is not gonna change really anything. I always did it because I loved it. The money was kind of like bonus.
Yeah, definitely.
But then there's like, there's a whole thing. It's like, is this, how do I continue? But I just reinvented myself, and I just tried to put the best part of me out there. And honestly, as long as I was proud of it, I just stopped giving a shit about like, just the little bickering, it's Eddie Van Halen, no, it's Sammy Hagar. Shut the fuck up. They both had great fucking albums.
Right.
And arguably, Eric Rowan made some cool things. People just wanted to hate on him because, he wasn't like, you can't substitute,
Yeah, there's always a left and a right, never a middle.
Right. But there's a reason why Eddie Van Halen picked Gary Sharon to sing, because there was something about him. And I'm a huge fan of Extreme, and I still like Gary Sharon. I think he's a great guy. But anyways, in that whole time process, I was like, okay, am I going to go to Warner Brothers? And, Creed's manager at the time, this guy named Jeff, he had just opened up a label. And as I was about to go from Maverick, which is Madonna's label, into kind of like this offshoot of Warner Brothers, which they all are, Jeff came up and he's like, no, fuck that. You're going to shelve that record. We're going to write another one from scratch. At the same time as I was that one from scratch, that was actually Down and Out was the beginning of a side project that song came out initially as a side project called State of the Art, where I had written the shit with a violin and intention, and I didn't know what Tantric was. But then instead of launching that record, I just created and integrated the violin. And it was just like, that's what was around me, and that's the ingredients I used. And it really, everybody was like, there's no freaking way that this thing is going to chart with this violin. It's just, everybody was dead sure that it was not going to succeed. And honestly, I was pretty sure it wasn't either, but I didn't really give a shit.
Yeah.
But the only thing that prevented it from killing the number one was that anytime Metallica releases anything, it's just like,
of course,
everybody else's are the stepchildren. but still, I love going against the grain and believing in it and taking chances and winning, doubling down and winning. But that gave us another breath. But with all of these incredible players that have come in and out of my life, and people and personalities, I've gathered the best out of all of them. And thus the title of this record, because it's literally, when you've done 20 years of this, you really can streamline
Yeah.
this is this, and it works. And I like to think that, unlike many bands that I love, where their latter records are getting shittier, I think my records are getting better. They just don't have $5 million behind them anymore.
Well,
So
and
they
that
fall on deaf ears.
has a lot to do with the trend nowadays. Everybody goes with the trend, and that was the best thing about grunge and post grunge was the fact that
It
it
was against the
pushed.
machine.
Yeah, it definitely.
But at the end of the day, all artists know this. They're only as valuable to the company that pushes them, their label, as a commodity, because the label isn't necessarily there to make music. It just happens to be a byproduct of their main thing, which is making money.
Mm-hmm.
So, that unfortunately, in my opinion, shouldn't dictate, what's out there. So a bunch of idiots get in the street, then, okay, that's what it is. But, I guess that's why certain music that I feel like I've heard, written, and I don't like to bad talk anybody, but like I hear songs that I'm like, I've written that song and said, hell no, and all of a sudden that song is literally the biggest song ever. But it's just like, sometimes not everybody wants to read something that you have to think a little bit about it. And I think that I try to write stuff that if you want to go deeper, you can go deeper. If you want to be technical, you can go technical. If you just want to listen to it simply and beautiful, like your favorite song there, then it's there. But that, you can get more out of it.
And you definitely do. For people that have never heard Tantric, if you want something that you can, if you're just a listener that wants to listen to good music, you could do that, like you said, or if you're more on the technical aspect, like myself, like I like to break songs down and really look at them. And you guys,
right,
your guys' creative process is
other
musicians
insane. Like nerd out to each other. Where like, did you guys see how he did a 3/4 over 4/4 syncopated, then changed major to minor? Like nobody knows what the hell that is. But I do remember great moments in falling in love with rock music. Like for example, Mirrors on the Ceiling, Pink Champagne on Ice. Like when one day somebody kind of enlightened me as a kid that was about going to hell, I was like, holy shit, it's so genius because California's hot. You know what I'm saying? And it was just so mind blowing. And even the great Neil Peart passed away, who wrote so many of, if not the majority of Rush's lyrics. And they were just such cool, just off topic things, But, that's why Rush, that had less number one singles than we had, or they only had one, but we had more top 10 singles. They will always have this thing that is just theirs. And whether you like it or not, it's sincere and it's unique.
Yeah,
and
definitely.
Those are the two ingredients to music that I feel that all music should try to have is sincerity. Even if it's like the dumbest pop, then own that, If you don't like, I don't really have a favorite genre, but like I like country that comes from a place, not comes from another guy that wrote it, passed to three other guys, and then you're telling a story that you have nothing to do with, and trying to convince people that you're feeling it.
Yeah,
just can't live it, But then there's like fucking Johnny Cash's and these people that are like, these guys were true outlaw band. They wrote that shit for better or for worse, and everybody's been trying to chase it since then. And yeah, country is not country anymore. It's like country is what pop was.
Oh yeah, early. I think country died in the early 2000s. That's just my opinion. But
right.
You know what's awesome though is post grunge is so underrated, and it seems to kind of be making a comeback right now. It's slowly, but what I'm excited for, like, do you guys like ever sit back, or especially you, and just think, damn, I'm the godfather of this shit? Like,
I'm like literally one of the last, living ones.
Yeah.
My goal is to become the best post grunge singer by default. But yeah, of course. But I think that post grunge, like all of the bands that are current and just coming out in rock, like what they grew up with, and whether you hear it in their music or not, like literally what they grew up with as kids was me, So like that's just like Alice in Chains and all these other bands were heroes to me. And like Pearl Jam 10 record, you can't take that off the top 10 rock records of all time. Of course it is. But like those people, when I was growing up, Eddie Vedder came out and I was like, fuck yeah. Because I have a voice that sounds like a lawnmower. And pre that, if you were in an 80s band and you sang and you couldn't, like, literally, I don't even know what the rain in Spain, you were just like, it was unheard of. And it kind of allowed that just kind of like, I don't give a shit, the opposite of what glam rock was. But man, I still love glam rock though. You know what I'm saying?
Oh,
because
definitely.
there was the best guitar players, the best technique, but it was just became a parody of itself in certain ways. Where it's like I never want to look back at a record cover or picture of mine and be like, holy, is that a purple cape? Right. I used to have Striper posters on my wall, and now,
oh man,
but I was like, it's like a bumblebee, man.
I think I had a Rat poster that was when I was a kid, where I was now that if I put it up on my wall, I'd be like, I don't know if I want this on my wall. But my mom actually bought me your guys' self-titled album, and at the same time, she also bought me Lattice from Tool, and I remember listening to both and equally thinking, damn, is 2001 a great fucking year for music? Because
it really was a great year. That whole section, was, and some of these people are my great friends, like Wes from Puddle and Aaron from Stand. And, like it was so great. And it was such a great, like, for what the 60s was and Woodstock was to the 60s. Like, I'm so proud of being like not only just there, but an actual part of the artistic creation that made that. For me, that is what defines wealth, and I don't think that that no matter what, nobody will be able to take away from me. But the thing is that I never fell out of love with it, and even when it's not logical to do, even and so much so that I never actually had a wife or kids or anything because shit, I was having too much fun doing what I loved, and the years went by. But man, no regrets. And
you definitely can't live with regrets. That's for sure.
No, definitely not. I mean, I'm doing, I might not be a stockbroker. I might not have $17 billion houses on the hills, but I can totally say that I've never worked a day in 20 years. I've just been there and I wanted to be there. And I can't imagine just having to force yourself to move things for just that,
just for a paycheck, basically.
Everybody I encourage to at least define your dream and swing as hard as you can at it, or you'll regret it.
Then you said it perfectly. I mean, you have friends in this industry, like names that are like, you threw out Stain and stuff, but you also got to share stages with these guys and like Smile Empty Soul.
SCP.
Yeah,
Smile Empty Soul, which what, like, is such a great band because they're, first of all, I've toured with all of these bands, but after you tour with them for a little bit is when you actually get to see that these are great guys, and they're not just like these, like, because people they prejudge and kind of like have an idea. But Smile Empty Soul is now a 2-piece, but arguably one of the better 3 pieces of just rhythm and just it was like no frills, but it was just cool. But again, they're like, I know that song, I don't actually know who sings it, and they kind of are in this thing. But I'm proud to be in, I guess, that piece of the pie, because I would like to think that 70% of all population are kind of like just the worker ants, and then there's 30% that kind of like ask questions why, and there might not be as popular, not popular to go against creationism. It's like, it's not, it's cool, but that's why
it's kind of why you do it.
People sell 20 million.
But that's
right.
The thing is though too is like people are gonna go on listening to music. And what's crazy nowadays, I heard, I think it was like my brother or my cousin or something. They were listening to one of your guys' tracks, and I was like, oh, who sings that? And they had no idea. And I was like, dude, that's Tantric. You got it. You have to. That's the thing
Yeah.
about nowadays. The music scene's in a great place, but it's also in a shitty place because people don't do the investigation on the music. They don't look into it. That's the bad thing about
And the only and the part is because it's so disposable. But
it. Yeah.
I will, like, if I had one thing to say about something that is completely illogical in our planet, is that I think that everybody on the planet would agree that the only universal thing that's loved by all people, no matter of their government, anything, you know, in all parts of the country, is that music. Like in the Cold War, if you hated Russians or whatever, or Russians hated Americans, but if Americans went over to Russia and played a rock song, it did not freaking matter because it was this universal thing. It literally is what I promise you, what 99.9% of all humans would say they cannot live without. Food, music, say more so than anything else.
Yeah, I've said it multiple times during the podcast. It's the heartbeat of the world.
So you would think that the world would protect it, the breeders of this thing, because all artists, unfortunately, in history, whether it be painters and things, they were either appreciated well after they died, which doesn't help them,
No.
because it's hard to spend any money or live when you're not alive.
Yeah.
But somebody's like, oh, I appreciate it, but I just don't understand how, like, people don't see that they're part of, like, this life system that keeps music. If you're an idiot and you keep on feeding the idiot machine, you're just going to get more idiot, you know? And if you love something, whether it be small, just know it's your responsibility to keep that alive, just like it is to protect our ozone layer. And it's your responsibility to be like, yo, I might not be able to go to the show, or it might not, but you know what? Let me just go and spend the $10 that I would have spent on a pack of smokes or whatnot. And let me just, maintain this alive and water this so that this art form can continue.
Yeah.
And other people, it seems if I had to start from zero, knowing what I know now, and like somebody unplugged, it would be very, very difficult if I knew now how long the road would be for me to do it again. I was, like I said, I always say this, it was too stupid to know I couldn't do it, but I was having fun. And before you know it, 10 years went by, and then I got a record deal that made money. But, my last words to humanity would be like, if you love something, then water it and make sure that the more diversity there is, the more incredible combinations come out of it.
Yeah, definitely. And that kind of brings up a good question, though. And I ask all the artists this: what do you feel about the music industry now, with the internet and stuff? Do you think it's kind of killing you guys or helping?
I don't know. I'll tell you, this is what I definitely know. I feel like in the end game, I don't ever think that the house loses, before the gambler. But I think that when the technology came faster than our ability to govern it, right? And if I was on the other side and my job was like, Hugo, you own a record label, you're the head of an A&R, your purpose here is to, make the most profit. I would do, and if I had no conscience or whatever, I would do probably what they did. And what they normally do is this: they will give somebody a really big record deal, right? And that record deal, initially it has a lot of money, but it makes them their money. And people, they're like, oh, we didn't recoup. But like, when you're first getting a record deal, you don't even know what recoup means or mechanical. And by the time you actually start getting privy to it, and you're asking more questions, they're not gonna be like, oh, unless you're a Metallica or something that's just like a Titan. They're just be like, you know what? He's asking too many questions. Let's just find somebody else that's super talented and naive, and just cut this one loose because, you know, there's the love of money outweighs the love of art, and
Yeah,
you know,
I agree.
unfortunately, of humankind, it's a sad thing. But you know, everybody's just like, you know, I don't give a shit if you don't have it, you know. But I think that everybody initially goes into it with this intention where I'm like, I'm an A&R guy. I own a label. I want to be part of this thing that fuels this. But you know, greed, it has a way of it's rearing its head.
Yeah,
and
definitely.
and you know, people that come in young and love with music go out doing pentatonic scales and you know warrant progression. Just like, you know, they just show up to work, but they're not
Yeah.
actually there, you
Well,
know.
a lot of bands and artists is now nowadays they're not even going with labels. The underground scene is so fucking huge
But they
right
don't need
now.
they don't
Yeah,
need it.
yeah, you don't need
But
it anymore.
you know, the thing is that I would say if I was looking at my younger self, I wish there was somebody a little bit there that was like, hey, just so you know, you're spending $600,000 on a video, which is like what Morning cost, which at the time actually was promoting music, and it had its purpose because there was there was MTV, and MTV played music, and I love that, that watching videos, and I still write songs with a video in mind. But now music is like free whether you want it to be or not,
Mm-hmm.
and it's basically the commercial, so you can literally drive 110,000 miles in a year, which is what Tantric does, and does 200 shows across freaking God knows how many countries just to make somewhat of a living. And God forbid that something like COVID happens, and luckily in this case, they allowed gig workers and stuff. But there's no unemployment, there's no social security, there's no retirement, there's no, what I'm saying? There's once you're done, you're disposable, and people are so focused on the new and cute chick that they don't see that the singer from Heart is still a badass motherfucker,
No,
even
and
though
you're absolutely right, man. I mean, like, people need to understand you're getting into a career that has no safety net. That's like the biggest
no
thing.
thing is that I would say that the only guarantee in this career is, first of all, people don't know statistics, but I remember my first one when I was first releasing records. Me and my attorney were talking. He's like, Hugo, so out of a trillion billion bands that are out there, 20,000 of all genres in a given year will get a record deal. Out of those 20,000 people who are like, I've got a fucking record deal, 150 would sell a gold record.
Yep.
So like, and out of those people that sold a gold record, the true people that were like in the 30 millions, and the people who literally are what people associate every rock music, they're like, you're a rock star, you must be worth $7 billion. I was like, yeah, but I forgot it at home, so I'll just take that 20. but it's just like, for all of that, that's what people see because that's on the spotlight, but they don't see the artists that just like Van Gogh and so many artists before, most artists have just struggled their whole life, and it was just whatever. I just wish that people talked about that, not just because I'm an artist. It's just because, if you love things, why would not you want them to continue to exist?
Yeah, exactly.
But
And I think people, it gets kind of gets swept under the rug a little bit. I mean, not even a little bit, a lot of it. So.
yeah, it's the music industry, but they treat it like the money industry, and that's not what art is about.
No.
It's a different perspective. I've never been a guy who's great at accounting or organizing anything for the most part, but you know what? I have this this part of me that makes me an artist and wants to color or write a poem, makes, create things in it, but people that are creative, we are the creators of all things. And and just as necessary are the people who put it in packages and figure out how to make 5 million of them in 1 hour and then disperse it for everybody else to enjoy.
Yeah.
But you know I feel like it's the only industry where the actual creator of the product is
On the
the
bottom of the
last one to be
on
thought
the
of.
bottom of the totem pole, definitely.
Yeah.
And that's the thing too, is as an artist, you're not in there to, it's not about the money, because money doesn't keep your name, in people's memory. Your art does, and that's the baseline of
Well,
art.
listen, there is money's part in it. Money can be a great thing for all humanity if
Yeah.
it's used for the right reasons, if it's not coveted, and if it is not more important than anything. Money should be a tool that is used to better things in your own life and everything, not to hoard as much as you can as you walk by somebody who has nothing,
Yeah.
and be okay with that, no problem. But it's this is why artists are artists, because we're like, oh yeah, this is an idealistic thought, but the truth is, one day you will be like, it will literally water itself down so much where you're just going to have 5 types of music: red, blue, orange, and that's it.
Yeah.
And there's just going to be one representative of those. And when, just kind of like our political party, when there's only one representative representing it, a whole dynamic of people, it's never truly represented. It's not really fulfilling everyone's needs.
No.
And
honestly, I don't think you could ever do that.
I don't think you can.
It's insane.
I don't think you can, but I think there should be, as there is money in giant government budgets for $5,000 for toilet seat, like you see these budgets, they're so ridiculous. There should be, hey dude, throw a 20 at hey, $20 for the dude who made the soundtrack to all of our lives, and you don't know that, but you keep on walking past him at 7-Eleven. He's the dude with the old Schwinn that still has his own, and I know artists that were super huge that, just by either being forced or just by having to, just came from this to just a pedestrian. And it's soul crushing, because to me, the more important thing to me is my wealth, is my family, my friends, and the things that are free, but also knowing when somebody, you did a job well done, you put that extra effort into it, there's these things in there that you wonder if people are going to get, and when they get them, and when it actually works, and there's that thing where it's just like, this song is like the smell of your basement that reminds you of your grandmother, and always will, and will always, it just triggers these things, and they're so important, to us. And I just really think that the soundtrack of humanity's life is an important thing to protect. And the veterans, just like, the veterans of the war, these are people that need to, people need to look out for them. There's organizations like Music Cares, but there's a lot of bands that came up with me and maybe were just right below, but they were such great bands. And, either they didn't have the fortitude or just work ethic or blind faith that I did to just keep on going, even though the obvious choice would have been to quit. But, once you realize you can get up from the lowest point in your life, then you don't have to worry. You don't have to fear anything, because, it'll all play out. At the end of the day, this too shall pass. Just do what you're going to do. And I might not leave the world with a giant library or a museum, but that will never, ever go away. It might be forgotten, but
no, definitely not forgotten.
I'll take that.
You're the Tantric fans, and your personal fans are probably one of the most dedicated fans. I mean, like you said, to be doing this for 20 years, and for people to still be like, oh, I popped that album in, all the time. It's like I don't know. It wakes you up
Well,
a
the
little
thing,
bit too.
it really is. But the thing is that it kind of like is a result and a kind of an accidental result. That's a positive one out of like going from playing these huge arenas where you like you don't see people's eyes. You just see like this like there it's a unit of mob, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where now you're playing these venues where you know you're yeah you have bigger venues on these weekends, but you know the other which is called the pay the rent shows, which is like, hey, can you give us a gig on a Wednesday so that we can? And but these things force you to be in close proximity and literally hear people, you know, and meld with them, and it creates more, I guess, solidarity between you and your fans because you see that this is affecting people,
Yeah.
you know, and that you do have some value because you know that it's not you trying to perpetuate something that only you believe that is alive, but that you have a purpose and that this is the purpose. And you know, I read so many crazy stories. I always tell the guys that I'm going to release a book of just the crazy texts I've ever got. I mean, literally the craziest things. But like some of them, like some of the most emotional moments I've had were just like how by coincidence this music became part of an ingredient which you know held something together like a family or a memory. And it's just you know just it's really humbling. And every time I see a bunch of people get together and come see my show, whether it's 100 or 200 people, I don't give a shit. They're getting up off their bed.
Yep.
You know, they're doing that. They're coming because you know it's not like to get chicks or to like you know it's really because they appreciate that and are thankful that you created this for them.
Yeah, they want to see that and they want to feel the music. That's the best thing about shows is that you get to feel what you know you've been listening to all these years.
Yeah, and I love people's interpretations of like you know when I listened to that song, I thought it was about this, that, and the other, and just how the same word can mean so many different things to so many different people,
Yep.
but still have the underlying same theme. It's really cool, man. You know, but you have to be a music dork like myself to really get into it. You know, it's just like you don't know that's a first generation action figure. But when you break it down to its complexities and how all of these things create this like ecosystem of people and music and art, it's great. But
yeah.
you know, there's no museums that display music.
Yeah, no, there really there isn't. I mean, the best museum I guess you could say is Spotify right now because they hold everything.
Because God forbid, you know, I've been to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame many times. I performed a show there with MTV. It was cool, but you get there and you're like, yeah. You know, so what if it's Jimmy Page's guitar? It's not the guitar. It's freaking Jimmy. You know, like I never get it's a bunch of autographs. And God forbid, some people are just diehard memorabilia, but I don't think that's representative of music. You know, it's like, yeah, what's representative is every day. You just turn on the radio. It's like, but you know, collecting a bunch of guitars never did anything. They were just pieces of wood until an artist picked them up and made them scream. You know, so
definitely
I get those, but I did. So I'm just going to cover all the grounds because they do throw shows all the time, and I do support that, and it's kind of cool to see some memorabilia that is really really old. But I did have a blast doing that MTV live from the Hard Rock from the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. It was really really fun, and I, you know, for a short period of time, the outfit that I wore in that breakdown video was actually displayed there amongst people who I shouldn't even be a pebble to their monolith. But so for that, I'm very thankful, you know, and you know,
yeah, it's good to be, you know, it's almost like self-humbling basically. So I got one last question before I let you go, my friend.
Sure.
What is next for Tantric? I mean, I'm a big Tantric fan, man. I mean, like, I can't wait for another album.
Yeah.
So is it in the works maybe, or?
Listen, I try to manifest all these things. One of them is like this, like Tesla, when everybody thought he was like kind of like crazy, he's like a little off center, and, Edison was taking his credit for his stuff. And, and then at one point they were like, oh, holy shit, this guy is actually, sorry, we were misled. And in a perfect daydream, I would just like everybody be like, holy shit, we finally gave Tantric a listen through without any preconception. And it turns out that it's pretty intelligent and good. And even if you hate that style of music, you can't, it's just like if you hate country or prog rock, you can't say that Rush is a shitty band. It's not. You don't have to like them, but they're amazing. Just like I don't like a lot of Paganini and stuff, but holy shit, that's a lot of freaking notes. But I would like that to happen. But until that does happen, which I don't foresee in any time future, unless of course I blow my head off or overdose, and then of course there'll be T-shirts and record sales will go up. But I don't intend on doing that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was just like, I'd rather just.
But no, let me stop you there. He's absolutely fucking correct when when he says that. People do not recognize music until something crazy happens.
No,
so, but go on.
I would argue very much so that, like, it had Eddie Vedder been the one and not Kurt Cobain, Eddie Vedder would be the Kurt Cobain, because they were neck and neck. And Kurt Cobain became this martyr of rock and roll, and for some reason people just love that story. I don't know what the fuck is wrong with it, but it's like, oh, he was so great, he died. Even Richie Valens, I mean, you know what I'm saying? Like, who would have arguably been probably forgettable, but these people pass, and Aaliyah and all these people, as soon as you die, you're
glorified.
Great. And I always thought of that as growing up as a musician, and I was like, what do I want? And I was like, I'd rather never be the brightest shining light and still do what I love and be in touch with things that are important to me that you sometimes lose touch, which is your family and these things that are free around you every day and you take for granted.
Yeah.
And just have that. And then after that, and not die at 26. And everybody's like, he was such a great guy. But it was like everybody encouraged those people to beat the stereotypes that are rock and roll. I mean, I still get stereotyped all the time. So, I mean, I don't even drink, but it's just like those stereotypes were emphasized by people. They wanted them to destroy themselves. And because it sold records, it did. And no great, like, there's never any of behind the music where it was like, and then the band started doing heroin, and that's when their career skyrocketed. It always falls into this whole sadness. But people, when you got enough people telling you you're invincible and you could do whatever without consequence, and everybody's cleaning the shit up behind you, it's very unhealthy for that person, because they're not living in a real world where they're not realizing the dangers of these things and how it catches up on them. And
definitely.
And it's a shame. But that being said, God bless the pain that they went through to create this stuff that's to this day
legendary.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, unfortunately, Chris Cornell and these greats, it's just like, why would you do that? I mean, but I don't know. I've never had the urge. I've had the urge of like, oh man, if I don't feel useful, obviously, but you have to have a severe depression. Yeah. But I'm just like, how detached do you have to be from this reality to not realize how important you are, even more than you are to yourself, to the people around you. And that's the path I chose. So I went to community college, but I got straight A's.
But see, that's good though, that you were able to develop that type of, because that's the big thing about the music industry too, is a lot of people don't understand how so many artists are depressed, and and they
Well,
have it all. Like the biggest one to come to mind, being Chester from Lincoln.
yeah,
When
I knew
he,
Chester really well, and
yeah,
honestly, me and Chester, and when they were actually called Hybrid Theory, I was there. My lawyer shopped the same deal, and the other deal that he shopped was the Tool record. I met Chester, and again, Chester and Mike Shinoda, who like were a part of this incredible thing. They were really the kings and the spearheads of integrating hip hop and rap and just hooks and stuff like that. The way
yeah,
they did it, nobody did it better. But we got signed as kids, like when you're 20 or 22, you're a moron. Especially if you get 22-year-olds that first of all has never had anything and doesn't have any good guidance in his life from parents to be like to humble him down or family or friends, and then all of a sudden you give that kid $1 million and just undeserved adoration in certain instances. That things that their capability of coping with everyday things becomes hindered.
yeah,
And luckily, the things that I don't like about the results of my career are also the things that I feel were accidental blessings, because I was never too big where I had to keep this whole thing. I can bring pan flute into the next record and people will be like, that's friggin' Tantric. But I was still big enough where people would come and I could make a living and I could be creative, and you know what I'm saying, where I could take risks and I could still go home and help my mom with dinner and tell my family, whatever, just
yeah,
be a human and be grounded like that. And that to me is the greatest gift I got, was that balance. And even though sometimes it's struggle, this COVID thing, for bands like us that need to go to work every day, it's devastating.
yeah,
And not only that, but it's like you have to give up everything else to do this, because you have to do it so many times to make a living, that when you don't have this to do, you're like, so what do
what the hell am I supposed to do?
I literally was like, I might just go eat some of that COVID and but it just, I forgot what I was telling, but it's like, reminds me of like Shawshank Redemption, when the guy's been in prison for his whole life, that like now he's been released and now he's an 8-year-old man, but he hasn't been in the workforce or in this world in so long that he has no idea what's common sense to everybody and second nature. To me, it's just like, I don't know what a real job entails, of like, oh, you're supposed to check in and like I've never had that. I
Yeah,
never even under the money. I just hope that whoever was managing me was I was just having fun playing music, and I just assumed people wouldn't steal.
yeah, and I
But
wish I wish they would be upfront about that, but
yeah,
definitely never.
I always hear these stories about bands going back 20 years and finding all this money that this label or publishing company. It's like, just because you don't come and claim it doesn't mean that you shouldn't give it to them. You know what I'm saying? You shouldn't have to hire an attorney to audit these numbers. You know what I'm saying? Just like you already made your shit. Just be clear and present and straight.
Just give them their piece, basically.
Just your piece. And let me just tell you, at the time that I read this, I think Tantric had generated over $60 million. And I think the last time I checked, we have had something like 60 million total streams. Okay. That's a lot of freaking times to hear the same dude sing the same song. And, some of these royalties, if you don't claim them within a certain period of time, like a 3-year period of time, they're gone. You know what I'm saying? It's like, how is that, and how is there no governing of that, since you're supposed to protect these people, not everybody. I don't have a law degree because I practiced every day and skipped school and played guitar and piano and whatever.
You're like, I don't have a degree because I'm in the music scene,
Right. But I'm going on tangents, but it is important as slowly becoming a veteran of this, that first of all, everybody knows that I'm super grateful, whether you're doing a podcast or you're doing something from New York, city in the middle of whatever, it doesn't matter, but it does matter that people care enough to talk about it. And I think for that, I'm really grateful, because every single one of those people, are impactful and help us. And I really encourage everybody to, listen to these records, whether it be mine or somebody else's, but give them a chance, because you might find something that you never thought you would love so much hidden between the pages of Glory.
Yes, and I preach that so much. It's Spotify has this thing. A lot of people don't use this. It's called the Discovery, and basically it shoots random shit at you.
Right. And that random shit, by the way, people, this is how it happens. So if you're a band, right, that nobody knows who they are, you can actually pay to get your song thrown on a playlist, right? So by that song getting thrown on a playlist, so you're putting a Tantric playlist, whether that song, whether they earned it, whether they worked for it, or ever, basically it puts somebody who is, not that they're not deserving, but it's kind of like cutting in lunch, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
and basically it's all monetarily controlled. So if I had more money, then I would be on every single playlist, every single playlist. I'll be like, just throw 500 grand behind it, and I guarantee that I'll have 30 million listeners.
Yep.
That's right? Because you spent, if your dad gives the teachers, 100 grand for an A, that's because your dad paid for it, not because you would work 8 hours a day, make shit money, then get in your beat up Beamer, put a trailer hitch and your shitty equipment, then drive 2 hours, pay another band that wasn't signed or big $75 just to play in front of them, so that maybe you could get 20 of their fans to listen to you.
Hey, that's it.
That's it.
That's the days, in early 2000s and stuff, when I was in bands and touring and stuff, that's what we did. We had to pay to play at these places like Chain Reaction and shit like that. It's
fuck yeah. As a matter of fact, that's how they do it. Even us, and in our case, I'm fortunate, but our label, when we first launched, they put a lot of money behind it, and we did have a great record and we did have a buzz and everything, but the way we got on these tours were bands that are headlining. How they make an additional income is that the bands that are opening get exposed to 20,000 people a night, but you don't make any money off that. Your label will pay that band 50 or 100,000 to open up and literally go for free. On top of that, the label's supporting you. So not only did you put 100 grand, they're also paying you to live, the bus, all your overhead. Okay. So yeah, at the end of the year, we played arenas all over the place to sell 1 million records, but the price of that was, you know what I'm saying, astronomical. But I feel like everybody should have a fair shot at a Grammy. Everybody should have it shouldn't be a popularity contest. It should be excellent music, but that's just the way it is, man.
Yep.
So
that's the music industry in the nutshell, basically. And you guys heard it, you heard it from someone that has the veteran status in this as well. He's done this for so many years. He understands the music industry itself. So
I'll tell you one thing. It's good though to be a new artist now. The one thing that is great about that is that you might not sell any records, but neither is anybody. You have the same resources. Technology's free, and kids are smarter than us grown-ups.
Definitely.
So don't give up on the dream. Be different.
Yeah, be different, and definitely don't give up. So that being said, guys, Hugo, I'm going to keep you on here after we stop the episode and everything. Just we'll close everything out with you and everything. But you guys heard it from. This is the veteran right here. You know, like I said, he is the godfather of post grunge. He has been around the block, so definitely listen to this podcast and listen with open ears, especially if you are a musician yourself, beginning musician, because he's basically gave you the ins and outs of the music industry itself. So
new generation will like
yeah,
fix these wrongs and balance this shit up, because I like to think that as much as people might consider the younger generation, oh, they're crazy. Yeah, they are not crazy. They're smarter, but you know, and hopefully in many ways they can improve this for the whole world.
exactly. Definitely do your part as a musician and as a consumer. Do your part as well. So
Yeah.
that being said, guys, if you haven't heard Tantric, which, like I said, you must be living under a rock, go check out
Yep.
Tantric's music. The music's amazing.
Yeah.
I can't even explain how good it is. So just go check it out. All right, Hugo,
Yep.
thank you for joining me and everything. And you guys, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you guys so much for listening and watching on YouTube. Yeah, until next episode, guys. See ya.
Thank you.
I can't stay.